Thank you for taking the time to view this video, which hopefully will give you a flavour of what you'll study in English language at A-level. Now this course will allow you to explore the language around us in new and interesting ways. And on screen now is one such example of that. Now this is a famous English language puzzle where people are asked to consider how to pronounce the word. And most people will think something along the lines of goatee or gotti, but the puzzle is such that it could be argued that it actually pronounces the word fish. So if we just explore this, you'll have some sense of the kind of topics we might study. So the GH, if you think about a word like cough, actually in that word, the GH at the end of it does actually give us an F sound. So that's where our F comes from. If we take the O in the middle, well, in a word like women, we actually pronounce that with an I sound in the middle, so women. Now that gives us our I. And then finally, in a word like action, that TI is the part of the word action that actually gives us the sh sound. And what we're exploring here is a particular aspect of English language known as phonology, which is our sound system. And we have our alphabet, and we have the different ways that those letters are pronounced. But what we'll study in English language is actually looking at the phonetic alphabet, which is a more efficient and useful way of looking at how we actually pronounce words and how we could, if we were to adopt this alphabet, actually spell them. On the right hand side, on the pink thing there, that you'll see a whole series of usages of the phonetic alphabet. Now all of those are subjects which you could study at A-level. And perhaps right now you could recognise them, but by the end of the course you'll know that the top one is English language. We've got maths, biology, physics, sociology and art. And we use that to help us to explore topics such as language and region and accent. Some of the other debates that we'll have in this, things like should English stick to rigid rules or should we be free to diversify? Does it matter if we don't use correct grammar, that we spell things in new and interesting ways on text messages? We look at language change and how English language is evolving and how it's evolved over time, going back several hundred years and where it may be going in the future. We look at other debates such as language and social groups and how your social groups affect the way that you speak. So looking at the language of teenagers, looking at the language of gamers or football fans. We'll also consider topics such as language and gender. Do women and men really talk differently at all? Is our language by nature a patriarchal language? Now what we have here is the overview of the course. Now on paper 1, you'll be studying language frameworks, and that's really the toolbox linked with language. I've already mentioned topics such as phonology, so our sound system, but we'll also look at grammar. We'll look at pragmatics, which is the way that language is used in social situations. You'll look at discourse, so how language is structured from speeches to letters to stories. You'll also study on paper 1 child language acquisition, looking at how children learn to speak and how they learn to read and write in the early years of life. On paper 2, it's a topic or paper that we call sociolinguistics. We'll look at all of the different things that affects language, such as gender as mentioned, region, social groups, occupation, looking at English as a world language and language change. Now your exams, those two papers, will consist of 80% of the final grade. Now in English language A-level, you'll also complete 2 NEA tasks or pieces of coursework. In year 12, you'll create a piece of original writing, and your original writing can be on anything that you want, as long as it comes under the topics of persuasion, storytelling, or information. So you might do a piece of informative writing about travel journalism or on a particular topic of social concern. You might look at a persuasive piece and aim then to write your own speech, or it may be that you want to explore the idea of storytelling and write a short story, a monologue, or even the first chapter of a new novel. In year 13 then you'll do a language investigation, which is very much like an EPQ or a dissertation that you would go on to study at university. And for this you can take anything that we have studied on the course, pick a very specific aspect of language and you investigate it. So you see some examples on the screen there. It might be that you're interested in the topic of gender and you want to explore the language of birthday cards and how gender manifests itself through the words and the sentence structures we use on birthday cards. It might be that you want to get members of a family to all keep a diary, and you want to then analyse how the age of each of those different members of the family that kept the diary might affect the language that they use. But for that one, really, you can choose what you want to do. And in terms of why it's a really useful course to study, it can lead to a lot of very specific careers. Students have gone on to do further study and then go into the field of speech and language therapy. You could go into broadcasting and publishing, advertising and journalism, and as our career landscape change, even much newer jobs such as social media manager as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour as to what you would study in English language, a whole variety of topics looking at language in new and interesting ways, 2 exams that you'll sit, 2 pieces of NEA and a whole heap of careers that it could lead to.